Hey everyone, this is an update to my SX64 LCD conversion project from a few months back. Happy to report, overall, it's been a total success. Haven't had any issues with it, and I'm really enjoying the fact that I've got an internal display that I can easily read any text in any color, and graphics are nice and sharp. So I've now got a perfectly usable, completely portable Commodore 64 setup that I can use outside of the room that my partner and I share as a home office and 8-bit playground. Because one of the things I don't like to do is to be in there disturbing her while she's working. If I'm rattling around playing with various 8-bit computers and bits and pieces. So this is great because I can put this in any room and I've got a completely self-contained Commodore 64. When I was doing the LCD conversion project, obviously I was aware of the fact that there was some inputs that I didn't need. I've used the S-video input to display the SX64 output, but the controller board also supports VGA in and composite in. So I began thinking, wouldn't it be great if I could put a Raspberry Pi with a 1541 hat inside the SX64 and have its display coming through the LCD. So looking at the available space I had, I decided that a Raspberry Pi 02 would be the best form factor, and therefore I would need a Pi 1541 hat to suit. And there are a couple of different sellers out there with hats in that form factor, but initially I was only finding people selling the option A style hardware, which means you can't share the IEC bus with any other device. It would have to be the Pi 1541 and nothing else. And I didn't want that because I wanted to be able to use the internal floppy drive if I needed to. So eventually I was able to find a seller with the option B hardware type Pi 1541 hat, and he was out of stock. Good news was he was planning to do another run, so I left my email address on his website, and I was contacted eventually and placed my order, and it arrived. So the planning began at that stage. Things like, all right, if it's inside the SX64, how am I going to power it? So I decided that I'd power it using the 12-volt rail that originally was powering the CRT, and I just found a little micro USB power adapter that took 12 volts in and had a pigtail lead on it. So that was that solved. Then the next step was deciding what was I going to do to control the Pi 1541, the software. And I've used these cheap eBay wireless keyboards for other projects before, including another Pi 1541 project. So I thought, we'll go with this. And I know they work and they're cheap and small, so it sort of fits the bill really well. The next hurdle to cross was getting the micro HDMI converted to VGA. Initially, I bought a micro HDMI to VGA all-in-one lead. That would be simple, but of course it didn't work. It did work on another device, not a Raspberry Pi, that had micro HDMI. So I'm not sure why, but there's obviously some incompatibility there. So I thought maybe what I need to do is use a micro HDMI to HDMI lead, and then use a regular HDMI to VGA adapter. So I found a very short fly lead from micro HDMI to HDMI and ordered a HDMI to VGA adapter. That didn't work. Not sure why, but after doing some Googling, it appears that in terms of these adapters, they are definitely not all equal. So I went back to eBay, ordered a few different other ones, and waited for them to turn up. And luckily, the second one that I tried worked. It does occasionally drop out momentarily when you're viewing the Pi menu, but that's okay. I can live with that because it's only momentarily and you're not in that screen very long anyway, just long enough to select the disk image or whatever. So once the display side of things was sorted and the control side of things was sorted, the next thing I was thinking of is how do I get media in and out of this thing easily? I didn't want to have to pull the lid off the SX64 every time I wanted to add a new disk image file or every time there was a new firmware image. So again, going back to something I did with another project, I had a spare micro SD extension cable. So it's got a micro SD card type circuit board on one side that goes into the Raspberry Pi, and the other end is a micro SD socket, which is this little guy here. So I have run that through a hole in the back of this pocket, and that's just double-sided taped to the side of this case. While I was doing that, I thought I really need to be able to know if the Pi has power and what sort of drive activity is going on once I've selected a disk image. So I've just brought two little 3mm LEDs out. Green power, red for drive activity. The other thing I was thinking is I'm going to need to have a way to be able to disable the internal floppy drive. As some of you are probably aware, there are various demos and games that do not like having a second device on the IEC bus. So I didn't, again, want to have to be pulling the cover off the SX to disable the floppy drive. So I've just put a small switch, toggle switch, which just cuts the ATN line in the serial bus connection to the drive. And that way, as far as any software is concerned, there is no second drive until I flip the toggle switch. And that is something that's worth considering if you're going to do one of these modifications, because yeah, there are various demos and games out there that just don't want to see a second device on the bus. So once that was done, it was then pretty much a matter of just tidying up the wiring and giving it a run. So I've had this set up like this for the last probably month, and it's working beautifully. So I'm really happy because now I really do have a completely self-contained Commodore 64 setup. We've got display, we've got storage, everything we need to basically pick up and go anywhere and have a Commodore 64 ready to use. So I guess the next step is to give you guys a demo of how it all works.